August 28th, 2019 Air Finance Committee meeting to order. Welcome everyone that's here. Welcome Scott, welcome Robert. One thing, the agenda will need to be amended, so I'm going to ask for a motion to amend the agenda to add one item to it.
I make a motion that we amend the agenda
To approve the financial policies.
Yes.
I'll second.
Second. Okay, any opposed?
You haven't started yet.
Yeah, we just did.
Working on it. Is it 6:30?
That's good, you don't get demerits. You don't get demerits. So the agenda is hereby amended to include committee approval of the Town of Ayer financial policies. I believe it's 3.0, Robert, is it not?
Yeah.
We reviewed these earlier in the year. Mark made some edits, submitted them to Barbara. They were approved by, I guess, by the Board of Selectmen, as I understand. And somehow there was an oversight. The Finance Committee was not asked to approve them, so I'm going to request a motion to approve the financial policies 3.0 for the Town of Ayer. Robert has copies of them, I'm sure, if anybody wants to look at them.
Yes. So, Mr. Chairman, members of the Finance Committee, so this is the original. We appreciate the committee's review that you did, and we got all of the edits, and Ms. Tierney, the treasurer, had incorporated those edits, and I think it was just a little disconnect. So we're looking for your formal approval, and then upon your formal approval, we'd ask that each of you sign. We have the BOS signatures, and then upon your approval, these will be posted on the town's website, and hard copies are also available through the BOS office and the town clerk's office.
Okay, very good. Is there any discussion about these amongst the committee? Selby, do you have anything you want to, because I don't know if you had a chance to review them or
Yeah,
not.
I reviewed it over the winter.
Okay.
I don't remember any substantial comments or changes, but it's been a long time. So.
So give us a moment, we'll
Sure. Yeah.
poke through them.
Do you guys remember this?
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember it, but I know they read it, so.
I'm good.
I make a motion that we approve the
Financial policies.
financial policies for 2019.
I'll second.
Any opposed?
No,
You don't vote aye?
that was a motion.
Right.
Yes,
So I second.
motion is accepted.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
So be it. You signed your life away. Robert?
Thank you.
You're
We'll
more
get
than
you,
welcome.
we'll get you all copies.
Sure, thank you very
Thanks.
much. I'd like to now move on to the next agenda item and ask Mr. Scott Hood from the Board of Selectmen to join us. Scott is going to present us information on the Page Hilltop Elementary School discussions that he's had with the school board.
Thank you.
And Robert's going to join him. So Scott, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I do have, thanks to Mr. Pomprian, copies of the executive summary portion of the Flansburgh report, which will be referenced in our discussion today. There's also copies available for anyone in the audience. It's very awkward with these four legs here. All right. Thank you very much for inviting me tonight and letting me come to discuss This evening, what I want to do is have a presentation I do want to walk through, provide some information, go through a little background of the options that were presented in the Flansburgh report, this Page Hilltop as a whole, how old it is, the current status of it, and then discuss how the Board of Selectmen kind of came to our desire for the replacement option that we talked to the school committee about. So the school district was created in 2011. The assessment is allocated to each student on a per student basis, based upon the student population. Currently, that split is approximately 60-40, with 60% coming to Ayer, 40% going to Shirley. The middle school and the high school are fully regionalized. They have students from both communities in the buildings. There was joint funding of the high school project and the proposed field project that Shirley will be voting on later on this fall. When we did the regionalization and we did the high school project, Ayer assumed a proportionate share of payments for the remaining middle school building in Shirley. They had approximately 11 or 12 years of payments left. So the amount that they had paid in on their own, and then if with Ayer taking over the approximately 60% of the remainder, at the end of the payments, it came about 60-40 split with 50-50 split with each community paying about half. In the regional agreement, each community is fully responsible for their own elementary schools. So we have our own jurisdiction over what we want to do with those buildings. Page Hilltop itself was built in 1959 and renovated in 1980. Mass School Building ranks it on as a 3 on a scale of 1 to 4, with 1 being the best, so it's fair condition is one way to put it. Maintenance cost is high due to the age of some of the infrastructure, and the layout does not really fit in the modern education standards, and these were some of the things that came up with the high school project when they were looking at the original high school, junior high school building, was that education has changed, and also you have electrical, plumbing systems from 50 years ago that have been held together with not much more than like duct tape, I think. So the Ayer Shirley Regional School District had put forth the field project. The first question from all the town officials was, well, what about the elementary schools? Because Shirley has Laura White, which is on similar par with Page Hilltop when it comes to age, etc. So they initiated the Flansburgh report from the Flansburgh architects to review both buildings, assessing the current status, future improvement, and potential refurbishments. And presented to us, I believe it was about 2 years ago, from the school district, was the Flansburgh report findings and also what the 4 options are for Page Hilltop. The first option is a renovation of the current building. It would keep the same footprint. They'd renovate the building as it is. The pros of that is it would be a lower cost than a new construction. The cons are disruption of the education during construction, because we don't have another school building that we can move the population to. The school is oversized square footage wise for the size of our community right now, so a lot of the rooms would actually be enlarged, but there would be some areas where funding would not cover all the costs. One example that we ran into this in the high school was in the auditorium, because the auditorium was built on a larger scale back in the 60s because Devon's was open, so the student population was much higher. But now in the 2000s, where it was much lower, Mass School Building said we'll only pay for an auditorium, which I believe was about 100 seats less than it was originally built. So that's one of the challenges that we would run into. Also, simply reconfiguring the rooms in the current layout keeps the kind of labyrinth that it is. I'm not sure if you gentlemen have ever been there. My kids all went through there, and I still get lost in it. It's not easy when you get down to the lower section to find your way from one side to the other. So that's option 1. Option 2 is renovation of just the lower building, removing the top building and replacing that with an addition. So again, the pros would be lower costs of new construction, and then the cons would be a disruption of the education during construction. So the lower section would be the same footprint, the upper section would be torn down, we'd have a newer facility on the top part. I guess kind of similar to what they did with the high school, where they kept the main section of the building, they tore down each of the wings, and the main education wing was built from the ground up. But, again, you'd still need to do your construction while the student population is there. We don't really have another alternative. Option 3 is to construct a new building behind the current building, and this was something that I personally was interested to see, given the way that the campus is laid out up there. So according to the Flansburgh report, and Ms. Granger on the school committee did say that it was conceptual, so there would be a process to confirm if this was an option, to build a brand new building behind the current facility. The pros are that there is no disruption to education during construction. Modern design would fit into the current education standards. The town can then have the option of resuming ownership of the current building itself. And my guess would be, I think the top building may have to come down to provide parking for a new facility. The cons are it's a much higher cost than just simple renovation.
Do you have a price?
The building, the elementary school in Harvard, I think, is running around $54 million as the total price tag. Mass school building will reimburse, I believe, around 50 to 60% of that. One of the things that happened during the high school project was the architects worked to maximize the amount of money we got from Mass school building, and I believe we received about 78% funding from Mass school building, because it was a Leeds building, like everything that could be done to provide more funding per se for Mass school
It was
building.
regional, so they probably gave more for that.
And that was also true, yes, because it is regional, we did get I think 1 or 2% higher for that. The fourth option that was presented is a regional elementary school with Shirley, which would be built in either Shirley or Devens. So the pros are definitely it's a lower cost and it's a standalone new construction. There would be no disruption of the education in Ayer or Shirley. The cons are moves the elementary school outside of Ayer, requires reopening, changing, and approving the regionalization agreement, because the agreement itself does stipulate specifically that the elementary schools remain in each town and are independent. And I'll also add, reopening provides potential to other changes of the regionalization agreement, which would, my fear, include the funding mechanism, because of the financial situation in Ayer versus the financial situation in Shirley. There has been talk on the school committee about trying to do this over the last, probably 5 or 6 years ago, because of our situation here. They were looking for Ayer to pay a little bit more. And the other con is that it's another capital project with the town of Shirley. So on the BOS, we had feedback from our constituents. Myself, I asked around to neighbors and friends who have younger kids or young families that would be going through. And the feedback I got was they want to keep the elementary school in Ayer, primarily because it's centrally located. It's a great location to have an education campus with the high school. And the BOS kind of took that as our primary reason for why we looked at option 3. The other reasons that we think option 3 are viable is the new building does not disrupt the education process during construction. The town could take possession of the old building, most likely the lower section, which then we could utilize for some very needed real estate, because we are a geographically small town, so we don't have a lot of area that we could put things such as senior center is one thing we're in dire need of in town. We need additional town space and our office space and storage. There's the gymnasium and the cafeteria in the lower section, so it provides larger areas where the Parks Department could utilize some indoor activities. The other reason is there's a lot of frustration over Shirley's support of capital projects. The failure of the field project the first time around, I think, was definitely one that we were not happy with. And the other concessions that we've had to do over the years to get capital projects to pass, taking over the middle school debt was one that we didn't really anticipate when we started looking at the high school project, and yet it came forward. And part of the reason why, as a member of the finance committee at that time, we said yes, we should, because we wanted to ensure that the building itself passed. And then the other piece was when they were doing the high school project was they removed the fields from the scope of the project in order to keep the costs down, so that it would pass over and surely. And most importantly with that is a new building would allow us to drive the project ourselves, so we wouldn't have to make these any concessions. The people of the community could actually make the decisions of how they want the elementary school and work together, almost standalone. So I added from the original presentation from 2 months ago. I think I was originally scheduled to come. So this was presented by the school committee as an estimated timeline for working with Mass School Building. And this slide is actually the one that first got me feeling we needed to be more proactive than reactive when it comes to our elementary school. So in this timeline, which was back in 2018, if we had put in our submission of interest to Mass School Building, the facility doesn't actually open until almost 7 years later, according to this timeline. So given the state of the building, and it is in fair condition, they do a great job there. I do want to stress that. The facility and the staff do a great job with the building itself. But over the next 7 years, as you're looking at the school itself, what other large ticket items would we have to put money into for the education of our kids at the elementary school while we were waiting for or making a decision on whether or not to build a new elementary school?
That's the slide they showed when they were doing the Fields presentation
Yes.
over at the high school.
Correct, yeah, and this was in tandem with the
Yeah.
what about the elementary school question that did come up. So the Board of Selectmen met with Dr. Malone and Ms. Granger on June 18th. Originally it was for an update on the Fields project and their intent to move forward, and we took it as an opportunity to just express our desire to look at option 3, the school committee to look at option 3 and possibly get a statement of interest into Mass School Building Association, which the next round is in February of next year. The school committee requested that we come to you, provide some information, and also get your feedback and whether or not the finance committee would approve moving forward with the process. And I do want to stress this is just the first step in the process. This isn't a guaranteed, yep, we're going to spend $50 million tomorrow. If the letter of intent is accepted, it can take up to 7 years, as we saw. Mass School Building does take into account the political feasibility of projects when they look at the statement of interest. And looking at the contrast of the capital project for the Fields, where Ayer said yes the first time, Shirley has said no, there's a chance that they may look at Shirley being a part of the equation if we were to go with the regional option, and that may be detrimental to our ability to get Mass MSBA funding. The other item is if without any action sooner, and the fact that Laura White is in a similar state as Page Hilltop, there is a possibility that there could be a competition between the two communities, either a competition for the two communities for funds from Mass School Building, or would force our hand to look at a regionalization school located in either Devens or Shirley.
The first question, did the school committee have a recommendation for which option they liked best?
They do not, no.
Seems to me that reopening the regional agreement is a definite no.
It's something that has I've cautioned against over the years. The overall rhetoric around the regionalization agreement has slowed down over the last couple of years, but back 5-6 years ago, there was a lot of talk about trying to reopen so that Ayer could pay a little more.
Well, given your comments about the 7 years, If we reopen that could take 2 years to get that closed, so that means we're 9 years out.
Correct.
If we take it as it is now, but once it's regionalized, we wouldn't be able to do it ourselves. So it seems, in my personal opinion, that I think option 3 is a good idea. I like the idea of Ayer doing it on its own. I think that's the right way to go, personally. I can't speak for the committee, but as a citizen, I would say that.
Yeah, the citizen, I think option 4 is dumb. I think option 4 should be out. But what that means about the other 3 is something else.
Well, so option 4, I don't agree with option 4, but I will offer this. Back when Carl Mock was the superintendent of the school district, he and I had a conversation about a regional elementary, and it was his hope that would go in that route. And he did lay out that he would envision an elementary school would basically have 2 separate buildings for education. One would be Ayer, one would be Shirley, and then in the middle would be your cafeteria, like your shared services almost, the cafeteria, the gymnasium. But
Segregating the kids
from
based
a
on where
cost,
they live.
and he was looking at that more as from a cost perspective, as spending, say, $100 million between the 2 communities for 2 new buildings versus maybe $60 million for a regional. I do want to throw it because I want to be as objective as possible with the information I'm providing to you, gentlemen.
So I have a question, because I don't understand how the arrangement works, but my understanding is that Devon's school education goes out to bid?
It yes and no. It's supposed to go out to bid. It does not, and Harvard has the bid on.
Right, I understand they have the contract.
Yes.
But will that come out for bid at any point
We-
in the future?
The few meetings that we've had, former Selectman Hillman has pushed Devon's on that because it should come up to bid. And I guess to that point, the other item that we do need to kind of keep in mind is potential disposition with Devon's, whether the communities take back their historical boundaries or some semblance of historical boundaries, or it just stays as it is under mass development, and the kids would continue going to Harvard.
Yeah, I think one of the things that worries me about option 3 and maybe even option 2 is just that we're making the school smaller, and I understand that makes sense based on where our populations are now. And the town is mostly built, so what are the odds of student populations going up over the next 5, 10, 20 years? Right, this is a long-term thing, so do any of those things retract from our ability to grow? And if Devon's were to come to Ayer, or just our population grows, what does that do to a smaller school?
So the school committee has done, and they did present it at that same meeting a couple of years ago, about projected student populations, and they are trending down a little bit over the next, I believe, 10 years, if I remember correctly. So there's definitely the larger building that Page Hilltop is no longer needed, so I think a smaller one would fit a little better with the trend as a town, because once we do hit full build out, or we're not adding as many houses, new houses, then you're going to see the student population. And even the other thing is families are getting smaller, so even if you have families moving in, the number of children going to school tend to.
But could the home buyers get younger, right, as
Exactly.
places in
People
the
like
city get more
yourself.
expensive? Yeah, maybe some younger people move to the area.
What are you looking for from this presentation? Are you looking for support from the FinCom, direction from the FinCom?
What I would love is some discussions. If the finance committee supports moving forward with option 3 and requesting that the school committee start looking at option 3, that's what I would be looking for. If you need more time, I understand it's not a light subject, and it's not a small price tag. If you want to take time, please feel free to do that.
What I would look for is I would like to see prices associated with options 1, 2, and 3. I agree that 4 should go right out, but 1, 2, and 3, I'd like to see pricing associated with those. I mean, that's why.
I mean, ultimately, we are the FinCom, so what we're trying to think most about is the
No,
financial impact of
understandable.
this, and to me, how this might impact the Fields project. If both these things are being pitched kind of simultaneously at this point, with one hopefully to help the other get approval, but But will it actually help the fields get approval if both of these expenses are happening at the same time?
So I will say that that it is a concern. For example, if the fields do not pass in Shirley this fall, then I don't think we're at a prime time to really look at an elementary school. That is something we do have to be cognizant of as we move forward. On a price for each of the three options, we don't have hard prices. It's just more of like a general understanding that if you're going to refurbish a building, it's a little bit cheaper than doing it from scratch. But that would be, I would assume that would be part of the concept phase early in the process.
Does this report have any of? the
It did not
rough
have any
estimates?
price tags, no.
Scott, can
I'm
I
a
ask
finance
you,
guy, would have included them.
for a little clarity? You said that if the field project does not go through, that could affect our ability to do the Page Hilltop, but if we do option 3, isn't that separated entirely from the field project?
It is separate from the field project. I make that comment based upon the impact to the taxpayer, because my belief, and this is just my belief, I want to stress that, my personal belief is that if the field project does fail in Shirley, the school committee has to go back to the drawing board and figure out what to do with the fields. They are in need of dire repair. My kids have been playing on that for 4 years now. The soccer field is abominable. The football field is dangerous. Outdoor track events take so long because you have to do track and then the field, or field and then the track events. There's something needs to be done. So they would go back to the drawing. My anticipation is they'll go back to the drawing board and come up with something that may not be a $7 million price tag like the one that's presented now, but it would be a significant increase to the tax levy, which is really part of why I want to try to be proactive with the elementary school, because I think we have to try to synchronize our capital projects between the schools and the community here, so that we can try to minimize the amount of impact on the taxpayer.
So we looked to take that point a little further, to project forward when debt exclusions will be paid off.
Mm-hmm.
When would these cut in, and if it comes out in the wash, then it comes out in the wash, but if there's a significant change, that's a different issue. Have we projected into the future when some things might come off the rolls?
We do have that. Yeah, I don't have it with me tonight, but we did put that together for the high school project.
remember that,
Yeah, so I did it for the high school project. I believe the town finance manager had updates that every year. So that's something we can also get for you.
I think for me personally, I think that would be very helpful, and that goes to your point. It's nice to say we agree, and we can agree, but the dollars and cents associated with this is not insignificant.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And the taxpayers are the ones that we're supposed to be watching out for. So I think we should at least, I don't know about you gentlemen, but I think we should at least look at some of these things before we make any kind of a recommendation or otherwise. Mark, what do you think? You usually have something sage to say, so.
Well,
No pressure.
sir, you brought up when I first came on the committee, and I forget what we were voting on or what was brought up, but you made a comment about sustainability,
Mhm.
because we had an increase of whatever it was. I don't recall. So I'd like to know what the board's definition is of sustainability. What kind of growth, we can sustain with the current population and the projected population of Ayer, because taxes are going to increase if you have
Yeah.
continue to have these capital outlays. So what is sustainable? If growth is sustainable, then that's fine, that's good, okay. We can go ahead and spend the money that, we need to spend. If we have to level it out, then that might be more difficult.
Yeah, it's a good question. So sustainability tends to have two fronts. One is on the operating side. The sustainability that we've always looked for is that we can sustain our operating expenses without any money from stabilization, and also we try to, if we have like new taxes that come on, like the meals tax came on, we try to not approach that as free money to spend. We still want to try and keep our operating expense within our normal increase within the tax levy. The other part of sustainability is infrastructure investment. And as a community, we've done a great job over the last 10 years putting money into our infrastructure. And it's, and you know, buildings do fall within that. If we have an elementary school that is now, 30, 40 years old since its last renovation, that needs hundreds of thousands of dollars of repair every year, or something, you know, something goes wrong and it's $1 million price tag, et cetera, you're kind of throwing money. It's like putting a Band-Aid on the problem.
Right.
You know, the infrastructure is the one thing, from having attended some of the finance committee seminars that they did. The one in the fall is fantastic, by the way. You guys should try and go. But, you know, having attended a few of those, infrastructure is a major problem if you don't keep up with it, because all of a sudden you're sitting with a $10 million price tag for something that you haven't worked.
And this goes back to what Pat was saying about when the certain things fall off off the schedule. You know, do we have a projected long-term schedule?
Yes, we do.
Strategic plan of, you know, when we want to do these things, so that you can, whatever, escalate the cost 7-10 years from now.
So we do have what we currently have on the books for tax overruns. And for example, this year, the big one that came off, I believe, was the police station. Was it the police station or the fire station? Police station. So we know what we have on the books. That is utilized by the capital planning committee when they look at their approvals for each year going forward. So the capital planning committee asks for, I believe it's a 5-year projection of capital plans, capital requests for year 1, and then they look at 2, 3, 4, and 5, and they leverage that information of what's on the books now and when it's coming off to decide what they can move back and forth. So sometimes they'll look at something that's requested this year, they'll push it off. Maybe something, I think one year was a fire truck, was 2 years out, they moved it up because they thought that it was a better time looking at what was coming off the books.
So just based on this timeline, so is 5 years enough?
So I'm thinking, like,
10.
take all the stuff that's being requested 5 years from now, right? We should be moving those things up, trying to buy it a year earlier and stuff in year 4,
the
a year
problem
earlier,
with,
clear the
problem with
books a little
projections
bit.
though is usually after, like if you do a 5-year forecast for a company, usually after year 2,
The weather
it's-
forecast is usually wrong. 3
yeah,
days
it's more
in
like
advance,
just
so.
kind of finger in the wind. But no, but it's a good point, and it's something that we've. One of the other things I'll throw in is Dan Gleason, who is a former member of the school committee, emailed me last week requesting that the Board of Selectmen, you know, like where the Board of Selectmen stood on the field project, which I reiterated to him that we are in full support of the field project. And one of his requests was that we start the regional leadership meetings that we had years and years ago. Shortly after regionalization, we had meetings which were the Board of Selectmen for both towns, the Finance Committee for both towns, the finance staff for both towns, and the Regional School Committee. The goal that we were trying to get to at the last meeting, Mr. Pompriand and I, was trying to get the capital plans for all 3 entities so we could synchronize. Unfortunately, these meetings were not very productive at the time. They tended to get bogged down into a quagmire of bickering and arguing. And that kind of led to being dissolved. So with Mr. Gleason's email, Robert and I talked, and I think we do want to try to start those meetings again, just so we can start better communication between the 3 entities. And the goal, which we would try to put forth at the first meeting, is we really need to understand each entity's capital requirements and when they're going to happen, so we can try to synchronize that.
Yeah, I mean, all due respect to Dan, I think we had 2 or 3 of those with the school committee, and those meetings turned into just 4 hours of back and forth nonsense. So I don't know how helpful it'll be, but
The school committee ones that you were at were tame compared to I think it was the second or the third one. There was like yelling back and forth. It wasn't pretty.
yeah.
It wasn't, but you know, it's something I think can be useful going forward.
Yeah, I mean, if we are going to work with them going forward, we do have regional schools, so it's not like we can just try to cut ties, right? So I guess progress, it would be a good thing. But
Another question that I have, simply because I don't know. We have a regional high school and middle school,
Correct,
right? But we have our own individual elementary schools.
correct,
We have one school committee.
yes.
Okay. So there's not a separate school committee just for the elementary schools in each
It's
town.
all one district.
It's one
Yeah,
one
correct.
district school
Those
committee.
elementaries are in separate towns, but they're under
Understood.
purview of the district.
They're
They
under
belong to the towns.
purview of the district.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, and I believe, if Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, the regionalization agreement stipulates that each town will have their own elementary school within their borders, correct? Or
So I
some-
had several points I wanted to make when the discussion at the table was done, but to address that one specifically. Prior to my resignation, Jonathan DeForge was the chair last year. The school committee went through a lengthy review of the regional agreement and put changes in front of the state. So the way the process works is the school committee agrees amongst itself. These are the changes we want to bring forth to the towns for their approval. First, it goes to the Department of Education, and they have to do a review of it. Last I knew, it still sat there. When it comes out, the next part of the public process is public forums in each town explaining what the school committee is proposing to do, and then town meetings for each town to approve the changes. And one of those changes was to say that rather than always just having an elementary in each town, it would at least allow a future building committee and the school committee to look at the concept of a regional elementary school. So that change is in there. Now, it hasn't been approved by the state, it hasn't come back to the towns for approval, but that was in the set of changes the school committee proposed.
If I can ask Dan, is there a projection of when this thing might return from the state?
I'm out of the picture now, Chairman Granger's here, maybe she knows, but I know that Mr. DeForge, before June 30th, when he was chair, was the one leading that effort. I don't know where it stands.
Haven't heard anything on it.
Okay.
Probably still in Boston, but maybe Dr. Malone or Mr. DeForge could give us an update. One of the other things that I want to mention was the debt exclusion. So Jonathan and I, for related to the Fields project, have taken a deep look at that from both towns, and some of the things in Ayer that are coming up quite soon that are going to be quite beneficial is the fire station, which people that might not have been here, there was a 2.5 debt exclusion for the building itself. Then there was site issues. They had to come back with $2 million more in money for site mitigation. And so between the two things, they're within like maybe 2022 and 2023, and a pretty significant amount of money. And like Scott said, the police station was recently. There's some other projects. I think some of the town hall things are up in the next 5 to 10 years with the slate roof and rehab here. So there's a lot in Ayer's capital borrowing that is in this kind of direction.
Yeah, that was, before you came in, that was one of the questions that was asked, is what's coming off the schedule?
Yeah, Lisa has that, and it's quite good to take a look at it. There's a lot coming off in there.
I think that's very prudent.
It's a very interesting read.
yeah, I think trying to sell the town on this is going to be fairly easy from a standpoint of we need to do something, but then the question is how much is the town willing to spend,
Right.
and that would differ between options 1 and 2 versus 3. So, I mean, that's really the pulse we have to figure out. I think we can figure it out, make it work, right? Our town financially is in a good spot, and we can figure out how to make it work if we
Yeah.
want to have option 3. If the town wants
Yeah,
it.
I just want to, you have to also understand it's the taxpayers who are going to bear it, not the town
Yes.
operating, it's going to be the taxpayers themselves.
Right.
Yeah, the feedback I've gotten, because I had asked a lot, my kids are, I got one in college, 2 in high school, and so I have no need of an elementary school going forward, but I've asked around a lot, and the feedback I've gotten is people really want to keep it within the town boundaries and centrally located.
Robert, you,
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to offer, as Mr. Hood mentioned, every year we update the debt schedule, so we'll make sure that the Finance Committee has the most up-to-date version on that. It'll probably go, it may even be on the website, but I'll double check. I'll get that from Ms. Capri so you can see what we have projected coming off, because the things mentioned by Mr. Gleason are correct, and there are other things. The second piece, as the committee knows, and this is on the website under the capital planning tab, if you will, you can see the most recent, our capital planning committee does do a 5-year projection plan. So at least, and of course that does change, but you can see some of the major things, at least from the air side, coming forward. One of the challenges we've had previously is we don't have that same level 5-year detailed plan from the town of Shirley, though we've asked on it. So that piece of the puzzle. And the district has put forth a lot of its capital plan, which I believe is on its website. And if I could just, Mr. Chairman, just also offer that, again, having been at the meeting that Selectman Hood mentioned to the superintendent, Ms. Granger, it's the issue, as you, I think that slide is very telling, is about starting the process, if you will, that even if today you're looking at a 7-year horizon on some of these assets, 1959 originally on the slide, last major renovation, 1980s, inevitably things are going to happen, as you know. And secondly, the timing has brought up a lot of questions because of the importance of the field project. And the field project is so important, and it is in some ways in the Shirley voters' hands already because of the delay, because the first attempt, as you know, the project has been adjusted and scaled to meet, you know, the current cost figures. I believe the committee has the memo from Dr. Malone. If not, I'll make sure that you do, where she identifies that not doing the field project is really not an option, because if we are not successful in September, there are a whole bunch of deferred maintenance issues that have already impacted the program up there. The conditions of the track, that's going to have to be done anyway, and then there's the whole ADA compliance issue hanging over as well. So in an ideal, what would be optimal is obviously to move forward with the field project to complete that obligation and commitment. And then, as Dr. Malone mentioned at the meeting to the Board of Selectmen, the notice of intent to the school building authority on the elementary school is due in February of 2020. And, get that together, in January to move forward. So I also just want to stress from our vantage point that the field issue, doing nothing, is really not an option. We've already lost a lot of time and have already had to adjust the project, and I applaud the school committee and the field group working with the engineer to make a reasonable adjustment due to that delay. But there are things that are going to cost all of us that have to be done. It would be ideal to do it in the project.
Yep. Thank you. Yes.
I have, several questions, if I may. Could they
Please.
come up and sit down?
Please.
The very first one is the motion. On its face, it's clear, discussed with the Board of Selectmen member Scott and Robert, request for school district to construct replacement. Are we requesting the school committee to do it, or is the school committee requesting permission to do it, permission including finance and everything else? If for was to replace by, it would make more sense, to me anyway. Okay, maybe it's a minor point. Go back 7 years or so when we were talking about redoing the high school. At that time, we were also going to redo the middle school as well. That didn't happen. So as far as I know, the middle school is still sitting there in its original condition. So,
Yeah, can I clarify that?
sure, of course.
The building in here in Ayer was a high school, middle school together. There were
Correct.
2 wings off the back side of the building.
Right,
When they redid the high school, they moved all the kids from the high school side to the middle school wing, tore down the high school wing and built the new education wing.
right.
And then after the kids moved back in, they tore down the middle school. So there isn't a middle school building in
Okay,
town.
that's fine. There's no longer a middle school. I was just going to say, could that be refurbished if it was still there and used as a Page Hilltop? Now, I thought you said, but I could have misheard, that the existing school would have to be torn down for parking space, in
Okay.
which case it couldn't be used as a town building.
So there's 2, and again, I'm not an architect, so this is just kind of I want to say personal opinion. So you can see here in this picture, let's see if I can explain. No, that didn't. Sorry. So this piece here is the lower building.
Right.
So the building sits askew. One piece on top, which is up here. This is the hilltop. This is the Page School down here. So if you're going to put a building all the way back here, you can see this with the outline of the original building. My guess, and this is just my uneducated guess, is that this part of this may have to come down in order to provide parking for the new building, the new elementary school, if we were to build it there.
Remain intact.
Yeah.
Okay. So that could limit how much use it would be to the town as a
Well, the
senior
important,
centre.
no, in the Page School on the lower section is actually a very good size, and it does house kind of some of the facilities that would be very beneficial to the town, the gymnasium and the cafeteria.
Right.
And honestly, I think, here in Town Hall, they're kind of packed into the gills, so any kind of additional office space would also be welcome.
And another question was, you've changed it now. Would the school committee request the finance committee's position on the Board of Selectmen's approach? Okay, now, again, why is it not the school committee here asking for your approach, your comments on your approach?
So the Board of Selectmen, myself and other members of the Board of Selectmen have been talking about the elementary school for about a year now.
Right.
And we, the three of us at the time, really wanted to be proactive with Page Hilltop, so therefore we wanted to take the initiative to initiate the conversation with the school committee to look at option 3 to build a new elementary school. Their reply to us was, please come to the finance committee and get their opinion, since they want to make sure that both the Board of Selectmen and the finance committee are on board.
Okay. And the only other thing is a purely personal comment. I think the school budget this year is 31,776,086. The school board field is 6.5 million because of the 500,000. We're now talking a possible 54 million for this. I live on Social Security, and it's beginning to get just a teeny bit thin now. Town taxes have more than doubled, 220% since I've been in town. I appreciate that we need these things, but I don't have any children in school. More importantly, I think, is that businesses do not send children to school, and they're paying a pretty hefty chunk of the taxes. And no matter how much we want it, I would ask everybody to be cognizant of the fact that there's a lot of people in town under the median income, a lot of people. So appreciate your time, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We
I'll-
have had Dan was first
sorry.
and then Mary. Dan?
I'll defer to Mary, because I might be a while.
That'd be different. Go ahead,
I
Mary.
didn't know you were coming tonight. I would have had
I'm
dinner
self-aware of
first.
this.
Yes, Mary. Would you like to join us, please?
Chairman,
Would you like to come and join us
no,
at the table?
I'll just stay right here. I have a bad knee, so I don't like to
I understand that.
get up and down, but I think one thing we should be concerned about is all the empty business buildings in town, if you want to talk about businesses, and they pay more of the taxes, because if we don't fill these businesses, yes, we are gonna be paying more of the taxes. I wanna say, Scott, that having spent a lot of time in the schools for one reason or another, and knowing that Mr. Stephen, who's on the capital plan, said, remember, the parents want their own elementary school in Ayer. I like that plan you showed where you build the new one up back. And I think that we could use the space lower. It has many options for what we need. A cafeteria, a gymnasium, etc. I'm not a wealthy woman either, but I would support that.
Was that option 3?
Yes, that's option 3. If I may, real quick, Dan, before we defer to you. Just a quick comment about the taxes going up. So part of the tax, what increases the taxes is also the valuation of the properties. And I can tell you from the time I've been in town for 21 years, my property value has more than doubled in that time. So that is, that's more of a contributing factor. Over the last 10 years that I've been involved in the budget process for the community, we've worked to keep our increases in operating 4 or 5% year over year, but the tax levy has gone up much more than that on a dollar percentage. And if you look at what we have for an unused levy capacity, we're around $2 million for that. And 10 years ago, that was maybe around $100,000. So even though our valuations have gone up, we haven't actually spent all of that money because the administration and also the finance committee, when I was on it, we were always very conscious of making sure that we could try to manage the tax levy in a manner that Ayer was accessible to people. And I know that this is a big ask and a big price tag, but I still think that the investment in the future is the best way to go.
The town has done a very good job of managing its levy limit. There's no question about that. And that's something that we should focus on and continue to do into the future. Dan, the floor is yours.
Oh, thanks, Mr. Denner. I think it's important for the finance committee to understand where this information comes from, because it's already out of date and really not worth a lot. School committee, and I'm speaking now as a school committee member, I'm no longer on it, but when I was, the school committee hired a company called Flansburgh Architects. They came in as a consultant and they went through with a fine-tooth comb through both buildings, and the major concern was, are they structurally sound enough that we can get 5, 7, 10 years while we go through the process that Scott said, can take quite a while with the state. They came back and said, yes, there's no cracks in foundations and all this kind of stuff. They're structurally sound, no problem. So then we said, well, can you take a look at what some options may be for replacing Laura White and replacing Page Hilltop? And then they took a stab at what a regional one might look like. All this is conceptual. They weren't hired. So their costs and their square footage and everything is based upon the Mass School Building Authority's formulas for square footage based on student population and how big a gym should be, a cafeteria, those types of spaces that are more common. So they weren't looking at anything other than that. And why is that important? So when the high school was done, the auditorium was really big from the old middle high school. And they said, we do not reimburse this much square footage for an auditorium of this size for a school of 495, I think was the number they built for. So they came back and said, we'll give you like a 400-seat auditorium. And the building committee, and I got to get to that in a minute too, has said, no. Page Hilltop has 600 kids and they bring them over for meetings. The town uses it for town meetings and different things. We still like to have that bigger auditorium. So the building committee decided we're going to go to the taxpayers and say the state's not only reimbursing, like say 2/3 of this auditorium, we want you to pick up the cost for the rest. And there was a few other elements like that. So in general, these projects, as the building committee goes through their paces, they come out with things that the town decides or the region decides it wants, but the state doesn't pay for. So what Flansburgh did with this is purely what the state allows. Classrooms are X size in kindergarten. Well, maybe we want them to be 10 square feet long, bigger for some reason, I don't know. But those are the decisions the building committee go through. So what's the building committee? So the state has a very prescribed process you go through, which starts with this period from January to April where you submit statements of interest. And you don't get any points for being earlier. They wait and accumulate them to April, and then they shut it down, and then they go into their studies and say, which ones are we going to do? In my time on the school committee, I had a conversation with a woman named Diane Sullivan. Diane runs the Mass School Building Authority, basically. Jack McCarthy, executive director, the figurehead, but she's really the person who runs it. So I said, could we submit statements of interest for 2 elementary schools? They're both similar in age, and we need to replace them both. She goes, you can, however, you need to tell me which one's a priority And the only reason you're submitting 2, because we're only gonna give you 1 school, the reason you're submitting those 2 is not to replace both schools, it's if you wanted to look at a merger. And at the time, what had just occurred in Ipswich was they got all the way to the final stage for their 2/3 appropriation vote for a debt exclusion, and it lost. So they spent years working with Ipswich, and both the town and the state spent a lot of money, and that money could be then on to another project. That's right. There's only so much money they have to go around for these school building projects, and there's a high demand. They want to put them where, as Scott said, high chance of success. Well, Ipswich merger project failed. So now they said to me is what we're going to start doing is wanting information up front that there is support from your leaders of the towns and maybe take a parent survey or something, whatever. They want to see evidence that if the building committee ultimately makes the call, gets public input and talks to the town boards and everything, but there's a committee formed that is the one who runs this process with the state. If they came out and said, we think this merger is the best plan, well, that's one we want to put forward, they're going to look and say, well, what kind of support is there for it? And I'm not criticizing what Scott's doing. Actually, now that I'm a private citizen, I'm actually in favor of it because I'm not too thrilled about working with Shirley either. But they're going to look at that and say, the Town of Ayer's Board of Selectmen and then possibly the FinCom have now said, yes, we want to just do a page hilltop. We're not interested in that regional concept. This kind of puts that regional concept to bed, right? I can't speak for what the state's going to do. They may change their mind. On the high school, they changed their mind. At one point, they said it has to be a 1,000-kid high school. That's why we were trying to merge the middle school in and all this stuff. And then the building committee said, what if we went back to them and said, can we just do a high school? We'll use the middle school in Shirley for middle school. It's a really fairly new school. It was getting to be like $75 to $80 million for the high school middle and high school. So we were like, that's never going to pass. What are we going to do? Well, not we. I wasn't on the building committee, but Mr. Commons is here, and he was. What they decided was, let's just do a high school only, utilize that nice middle school we have in Shirley, and that's how we'll approach it, and it brought the price tag down. Well, then they said yes. After saying, no, you need about close to 1,000 kids in a building, or we're not interested in working with you. When it came in and said, okay, it's going to be $495 in just a high school, they said okay. So in the building committee process, might they change their mind and say, okay, if Ayer and Shirley now say they're interested in our regional, we'd entertain it. But the most recent conversation I had before I resigned with Diane Sullivan was, up front, if we're hearing there's a lack of support for that merger concept, we're not interested in doing the merger. We're not going to repeat the Ipswich process again and tie up millions of dollars and people's time on a project likely to fail. So I'm perfectly fine with it. I just want to let you know the political ramifications of it is the state is eventually going to look for evidence of support for a regional one, and they're going to already hear that from the Ayer perspective anyway, that's out. And the last thing I'll mention is the reason I wrote to Scott and Robert about wanting the Ayer leadership to talk to Shirley leadership is the school region is a partnership of Ayer and Shirley. The two towns formed this third entity that's only interested in the school district, right? The school committee just runs the school district. They don't represent either town. So I said, as you guys are the partners that form this district and you have this group of people that are running it for you, Ayer seems to be going down one way, which is we want the field project, we want a separate page hilltop, that we're not interested in a regional thing. Mr. O'Keefe just recently wrote some memo where he said, he mentioned another merger project in Northbridge. We should be looking at the Northbridge type project where the two schools got merged. You guys basically said, no, you're not even, well, not you guys, can't the FinCom, the Board of Selectmen is not interested in even talking with that. Well, you should talk to your partner in education and tell them, is this how you feel? So they're not sitting there thinking, well, maybe we'll get out of this more cheaply. We won't just have to do Laura White on our own. We'll do a regional one with Ayer, and Ayer will help us pay for it. They might be good for them to know that, right? While they're talking about how their plans might go. So that's why I just felt that Ayer needs to represent Ayer's interests and not rely on the school committee to do that. And so that's kind of why I was pushing on Robert. Now, he made a great point. I'm Robert, sorry, it's his son. Scott, that's Robert. He made a good point that the timing...
We are twins.
The timing is probably not great. Before they have an election, I think Ayer's maybe trying to influence their election, let them have their election. But, Scott, and I agree the timing is probably not good. I wish I had thought of this back in December when the vote first failed, that we could have got together with Shirley sooner before the vote was immediate.
I've been avoiding those meetings since the last one.
But I just think as partners in education, it's the two towns that are the two partners. You formed a third entity to run it for you, but it's the two towns are the partners.
You keep saying that. You make it sound like we're two parents with a child, and we're trying
Ultimately,
to be
that's what we are. But part of the problem and a lot of the frustration over the time with regionalization is it feels like we're subsidizing Shirley's education budget. You know, the middle school debt, you know, that Ayer took on, the reduction of the high school project, so it didn't include the fields. Now the reduction of the field project, which is the same price tag, but now we're getting less. And the other thing is, when the regionalization agreement was passed, there was a 5-year hold harmless agreement, which we were given our assessments, and there was a 5-year calculation where each year Ayer would pay $100,000 less, Shirley would pay $100,000 more. The reason for that was, if looking at the straight formula of what they should each be paying in, Shirley's increase would have been unsustainable, and we don't think the regionalization agreement would have passed. The problem with that, you know, though was where it was a subsidy, is looking at the calculations of that, that stripped about $1.5 million out of the school operating budget, just the way the mechanics worked on that payment. And one of the reasons why I am adamant that, yeah, I really don't want to do another capital project with Shirley, particularly around Page Hilltop, is we've been subsidizing this for so long, and it's important for me that the community feels that, like, this is something that people want to stay in our community, and we should be able to be the drivers of that. And it is a partnership, but yes, the two partners are just different. We're poles apart at this point, especially when it comes to capital projects. The meeting in which the Flansburgh report was first presented, as soon as that regional option went up on the slide, O'Keefe was heard saying, "Oh, that's great, we'll do that."
Who's O'Keefe?
Chairman of the Finance Committee. The chair of the FinCom for Shirley.
He made a decision. We were doing a regionalization of the elementary school. You know, we are a community that invests in education, and we deserve the best for our investment. And there's been a lot of frustration. And yes, you know, being on the Finance Committee and now the Board of Selectmen have kind of been on the front lines of that. But, you know, there is a staunch frustration with our partners at this point. And when it comes to, you know, the fields are in Shirley's hands now. So the next big project is going to be the elementary school. I don't think there's anything else that really would trump this. But let's work to see if we can give our taxpayers in our community a good investment in education for years to come.
Yeah, I don't think we need to get too far ahead of ourselves, but to your point, at least if the elementary school project here fails, it should be because we want it to fail. Or
Exactly.
we want to shoot it down, not that we're beholden to someone else. So,
Well, it sounds like there were several different agendas in the mix simultaneously. And I think it would be very easy in error if we allowed them to appear to be blended. I think this elementary school project is a standalone independent entity for Ayer to decide. That's, as a citizen, that's the way I see it. The regionalization and all the other issues and the politics and the unhappiness and all that, that has nothing to do with the elementary school project, in my opinion. Now, I could easily be wrong. I've been wrong once before in my life, and that's when I thought I was wrong and I wasn't. Seriously, though, I think as an entity, us, the Finance Committee, needs to separate all these things out and focus on what we're being requested to address by the Board of Selectmen. This is wonderful hearing all this. I think it's great. I love it.
Sorry to interrupt, I actually do want to say thank you to everyone who's behind me who came in afterwards, because I didn't know you were all there, for the information that they provided.
That's been great.
And I want to stress, you know, this is to just begin the process. You know, this isn't a slam dunk. Yes, we're going to go spend $50 to $60 million or however much it's going to cost. This is to begin the process down what looks to be a fairly long road of years, in hopes that we can have a nice elementary school within our borders where people want to keep it, before we end up having to sink a lot more money into the current one.
I think what the Finance Committee needs, and please speak up, gentlemen, Selby's request for estimated costs, I think, is a really good idea, and we should have those.
but if we need to give you approval to move forward and start looking at things before you can get an estimated cost.
Yeah, I'm not sure of the mechanics of that.
So I didn't
Check it
finish
out.
my Flansburgh point. So there is that document, there's tons of detail, this thick, is on the website of the school district. It does have cost estimates, but again, based upon the square footage of what MSBA would say, we will reimburse within these things. So you have to keep that in mind. It's a point in time, it's about 2 years ago point in time, so with construction costs escalating, probably at 10% a year, so whatever the number. But there are numbers in this report that came from on the school's
I
website.
apologize, I didn't put them in.
Yeah.
I have another,
Well, they're not really worth anything,
have
to be
another
honest. I
question
mean,
about-
you'll get a ballpark sense, but it's,
so your interactions with the MSBA, it seemed like they seemed in favor, or they were pushing the towns to do a regional elementary.
no.
No?
No, I'm sorry if I misrepresented that. So what I said is, could we, in the time as a school committee member, trying to keep the interests of the entire district in mind, bring 2 projects forward? And they said, yes, but.
Okay.
One thing you have to do is say, which is your priority? Because we're only gonna give
So
you
that
one
means the
building.
school district has to determine, or the school committee
The school committee
must make
would
the
make that
determination
call.
which one is
With
the priority.
input from the towns, because if Shirley says we're not ready to spend any money,
Right,
and
if our
Ayer's
town's the only
aggressive
one
and ready
pushing
to
one
go,
forward, then.
That-
the
Yeah,
school
that's
committee would be
what-
wise, I would think, and I can't speak for them,
Okay.
but as an independent citizen, I would say,
No, that was-
yeah, if Ayer's willing to go and Shirley's
Right,
not,
that
well,
answers my
then.
question.
So the second part is though, but because they will give you one building, it could be a merged building. So that's why they would let you put both buildings in. Say which is your priority in case your one building becomes a standalone in a one-town building, Page Hilltop in this case. But if you do want to move forward with the merger, we need to understand what this other building is and its age and its issues before we'll let you have a merger of those two. Because if one's not that old, they might say, well, screw it, we're not going to merge two when you got one that's fairly new. But in this case, they're both reasonable age and we know they both need to be replaced. But they would want the information on that second building if you're going to pursue the merged concept. And again, politically, what they told me at the time was, if we hear that one town is not interested, or either or both, we're not even going to let your building committee consider it. It's out because we know it's iffy. We don't want it switched to be repeated.
Dan, we have a question from the audience.
Actually, I have a piece of information for you in response to
Please bring it forward.
the gentleman's question about the estimated cost of projects. This is the executive summary from the Flansburgh report, Dan. This report came out in the winter of 2018, as I recall. So we're a year into the report already in terms of length.
I believe it was.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Yeah.
Yep.
they were hired
That's
in
correct.
winter of
Yeah,
17,
you're
so
right.
the report was a year.
Question.
And this is, as I said, the executive summary, so it's brief, but the 250-odd page report gives you all the details. And I'm going to read from the report. The cost of renovating both schools, it's a consolidated report, so you'd have to extrapolate the page Hilltop from the Laura White. But cost of renovating both schools over a long period of time, they estimate about 7 years, I think, will cost approximately $88 million and will take several years to complete. The cost of designing and construction one new school, I'm not making comment one way or the other on that issue, but the difference in cost, will cost approximately $78 million. And assuming a reimbursement rate of 53%, which is close to what we got for the high school, if I'm not mistaken, will be less costly than all other options. So they put that in black and white, and it's going to be a difficult process, I believe, to sort out the financial implications. And I know this is just preliminary, but that answers the question about what was the estimated projected cost.
That's the
in
merged.
2018.
That's the merged building, though.
Yeah.
Sure,
They
but
give you both.
you can figure that a single non-merged building would be slightly less than a single merged
Well,
building. just
Exactly.
to use
Yeah,
space.
One building's cheaper than two. We know that, right? So
Right.
what they're saying is 40-something. I think was both came in the 40s. So you're looking at 90 million for two separate, or 78 for one.
Right, but assuming that we and the Board of Selectmen and maybe the whole town is in favor of a standalone elementary that is not with them, then it really comes down to one refurbished school versus one new built school. And if the cost is not that different between the two, like I was thinking if it's
Yeah.
$5 million to renovate or $50 million to build a new one, maybe that's a tough thing to sell.
Yeah, and
But
I
if
think
the
Dan-
dollar value is similar, where refurbishing was 30-something million and one new school, if you kind of downscale that estimate for a non-regionalized one, we're maybe looking at like 50 million, then that's not that far apart where it's an easy sell to say, let's just build a new one, it'll be way better and
Exactly.
we don't.
And those are
disrupt.
roughly the numbers for standalone.
Right.
Yeah.
They were running 40 to 50 for a brand new Page Hilltop. A little bit less for Laura White because it's a little smaller student population. And then the merged was that $78 million number. And the other thing with the renovations, the first number Polly mentioned, MSBA doesn't reimburse renovation. They're
Right.
trying to build 21st century schools that are gonna last for a lot of years, build in all of the things people learned about teaching children and technology and all that. So they're
So it's
just putting
new or
lipstick on a pig, you're not gonna get any reimbursement money for that.
So it's new or nothing.
Well, not new, they'll do an ad reno like the high school. They'll do a
Yeah.
renovation, but they're not gonna just do a renovation so Page Hilltop looks exactly the same with fresh paint and new tiles,
Okay.
right? That's not, they're not interested in that.
Have another question for the audience?
Just a quick question. Is it public knowledge, just out of curiosity, how many children are currently school choicing from Shirley to go to Page Hilltop Elementary School? Because I would wonder, because I've worked in both buildings, and I can tell you there is a difference in the conditions of the buildings, especially if you compare the 1936 building to the current state of Page Hilltop. I do know of some families that have had the option of school choicing up to Page Hilltop because of the bigger facility, the grounds, whatever it may be, the teacher selection, whatever. But to me, if you're gonna have a town that is against the funding or against regionalization of an elementary school, I would say that, you know, what percentage of their town is actually utilizing spots of people that are building houses right now in Ayer that are, I mean, besides Pingree Hill, you have all the new houses on 110, you have all the new houses up on, was it Nashua Street Extension, okay? Aside from that, you have an aging population. The baby boomer generations is millions of people. You project 7 to 10 years out. If you know the average age right now of the highest number of people in a certain age group, and you project 10 years out, when you have turnover of real estate, I mean, you're having all these new families starting to move in. So, I mean, when you think about so far as size, you can't really say, oh, well, you know, they're saying it's going down, but I completely disagree. And I just think that there's some things you need to keep in mind, that it's you know, so far as the people that are moving in, the people that could be moving out, and just something to think about.
If I may, Mr.
Those are
Dunn?
good points. Thank you for bringing that up.
If I may?
Yes.
So there was a study done, and with being here last night to hear about 50 new housing units that were on the planning board's agenda, might that need to be refreshed and looked at? Quite possibly, but it's only a couple of years old, that population study.
Yeah,
So
and I
those-
think they look at trends, they look at building permits that are issued, they look at lots of
Yeah, but they were
factors.
projecting us to stay pretty flat to where we are overall.
And
Because
it logically doesn't seem like it's accurate, but
Right.
there is a mechanism that they're using.
there's more 1, 2 child families instead of 4, 5, 6 child families.
Right, I
okay.
can understand that.
And there is no choice unless something changed, and I'm only 6 months off the school committee, so I don't think it has.
I'm not
There's-
aware of it, but
There's no school choice is an inter-district thing. There has been some history of families, and I'll just give you one example. They lived in Lancaster, but the woman was an Ayer native, and she choiced her children into Ayer. When regionalization happened, by that point, she bought a house in Shirley. She said, I want my son to stay where he's been, and the district said, yeah, even though he lives in Shirley now, we're not gonna make him go to Little White.
right.
He also had a younger sister. The younger sister got to go because of a family connection. So there's those exceptions made, but there are very few of them. It's like when these Shirley kids could go to Lunenburg. That was phased out with only like siblings were allowed to continue choicing once the district became, then it was like, no, there's no more tuition agreement in Lunenburg. So families cannot optionally just say, I want to send my kid from Shirley to
Yeah,
Page
I wasn't
Hilltop.
sure if you
They-
guys
they
had
can't.
any numbers on
They
that.
can request, they definitely can, Shirley residents can request. for their
I
kids
wasn't
to go to
sure, I
Page
know
Hilltop, but
there's
it's based
some
on
people,
space.
and now that we have the new preschool center, I know there were concerns when our center got bumped over from Laura White to Page Hilltop, that a lot of our families that we had at Laura White, their concern was for childcare, and that having, say, you know, their youngest up at Page Hilltop for preschool, AM or PM, and then having their other children at Laura White. So I just was just curious if you had heard of many requests happening, but I'm just.
I think
you know.
they've made some accommodations in scheduling to provide
Right.
for those kids with the care.
But Dr. Malone would be the person, or Bill Plunkett, to talk to about those things.
I was just curious.
There was some historical things where they let families kind of stay through because they had, when it was 2 separate districts and a choice in had been made, They didn't kick the kid out back to the other town because
Right.
the district
And then
merged.
on a quick point, I do know that back in 2011, they were ready to close Laura White because of its condition. And then for whatever reason, they decided to keep it open. And I do know that there were some concerns of the windows and the paint and everything else in that old building. And I just know that this is just my opinion, that if Shirley was to hear of us thinking about building a new elementary school, and if you compare, say, Page Hilltop to Laura White, they may say, wow, we're really gonna need a building, say, 10 years from now, and the only way we're gonna be able to afford this is if we come together and figure it out. So I'm just curious as where this is moving forward.
There was some hyperbole in the regionalization process, I think, to try to make Laura White seem like it was crumbling so that people would want to move forward with the region. But we just had the architects through, they went through it with a fine tooth comb. They had subcontractors for HVAC and technology and everything else go through it. And so there's nothing that's out of code. No.
Mary?
Code for the time it was built, but there's no structural issues with it.
Dan might have the answer to this, but if the town of Ayer decides they want option 3, their own new school, shouldn't it be a different school committee? Why should the regional school committee have anything to say about the town of Ayer doing, say, option
Because
3?
the town of Ayer entered into a regional school district with the town of Shirley. So the entity is the regional school district. There's no more town of Ayer school department
So
or
we
Shirley
would
school
have,
department.
they would have say over our building a new,
There'll be a building committee formed.
okay.
So let's say the school committee says, we're gonna submit a statement of interest in the spring. And they submit it for, it's their choice, really, but then obviously they're gonna collect input from the towns and everybody.
Mhm.
But they might say it's just Page Hilltop. Then that's the project that the state is gonna look at. And there'll be a building committee before, and what will that new Page Hilltop with that? If they wanna submit and say, we wanna entertain the merge concept, surely then would have a say.
I think to her point, like, how would that work? I mean, if they just decide they want a bunch of 3 square foot rooms because they're spiteful that we're not doing a regional school district, like, what happens if the combined entities can't come to a?
You can't, the MSBA has standards of a minimum size, they're not 3 square feet.
I think
so-
we should let the school committee speak.
All I was gonna say
Please.
is, we're kind of in a fact-finding mission right now. We're trying to gauge the town and the both towns, where their level of interest is and where their level of support is. Keeping in mind that any statement of interest we submit may not be accepted. So we could put in something in February and be, not be selected, and we have to put it in the following year. So it is a process. Personally speaking, as a member of the school committee, I'm interested in hearing that a town's ready to go, because I don't wanna go through a process of picking a school and then bringing it forward, getting submitted, you're all excited, and then it doesn't pass. So that's where I'm coming from personally, when I'm gonna be asked to decide.
I understand 100%. You're speaking for the committee and you wanna make sure your time's not wasted.
Right.
Understand 100%.
So that's, kind of where I stand. And as far as, the school committee picking a school and, once we select what school's gonna be submitted and we're selected, a building committee's then gonna decide what the project's gonna look like, not the school committee, so.
Right.
So as I understand this process, the Ayer Board of Selectmen came to the school committee and requested that you go down this road, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
And the purpose of this meeting, and this has been wonderful, it has. It's
We've
been
gotten off
great and
topic, but-
educational. But the purpose of this session is for the Ayer Finance Committee to consider whether we are in agreement with the request that the Ayer Board of Selectmen has made to the school committee. Is that correct, Scott?
Yes, so we're asking, the Board of Selectmen asked the school committee to to put together a statement of interest for Mass School Building for placement of Page Hilltop, citing option 3 as what we would prefer. The feedback was they're looking for the Finance Committee's input on that. So it's the committee's desire to support or not support, just beginning the process.
Where do I sign?
So let me ask you this question. As a representative of the Board of Selectmen, are you asking the Finance Committee to vote on whether we agree or disagree, or are you asking for just a general statement?
A vote,
Okay, that's what I thought.
yes.
So in order for us to execute a vote, I believe we need to have the schedule and see where things are coming off. Is that correct?
I would like to
I
see
think
that, and
that's
I'd like to
fair.
see estimated costs of the
Are
top three
are
options.
we going to go to the school board's website and look at those estimated costs? Because they're there, and if they're there, it should be incumbent upon us to look at them. Not for
They are
something-
there, they're also on the town website. I
Okay.
asked the Flansburgh report to
Yeah.
be posted, which was
If you could
posted
send a
up
link
yesterday.
over to help us with that, we would. And I would suggest that we schedule another meeting in 2 weeks, which should be enough time for us to digest this stuff and come up with something. Do you guys agree with that? Those of you that are gonna be here in 2 weeks? Does everybody, is that acceptable to you?
That's perfectly fine. Like I said, this is a large request. It's a lot of information, and I don't want to, I don't want any of the members to feel pushed into making a decision
No, I
tonight.
don't either. I want to, everybody should have the time they need to make a decision that they're comfortable with. So if
2 weeks
that's,
works for you guys?
I don't know. I have well, 2 kids at home now.
I mean, like, you don't need an answer from us sooner than 2 weeks.
No,
from now.
I will ask Ms. Granger how long would it take to put together a statement of interest for Mass School Building?
Oh geez, I don't think it's something we would really be working on until like, I'd say like November, December time.
Okay.
so if by the middle of September, we've concluded our analysis and responded to the Board of Selectmen, that would be enough time for you guys?
Yeah, we have not discussed it as a board. We have not discussed, you know, which
Okay.
school, if, or even submitting,
We
so-
can always try and schedule for next week, but next week is Labor Day, and I don't think that would be a good thing. Would you be available next Wednesday?
I would say honestly, Pat,
Sounds like 2 weeks.
Pat, I would say go with the 2 weeks. Because, you know, you have the long weekend coming up, people aren't gonna wanna look at their
I would
town
say it's
stuff
not
over
extra
the weekend.
time to
I
read
don't,
town
I don't
reports
want us
and
to be the
things.
long pole in the tent. So if it's shorter, fine. If it's 2 weeks, is 2 weeks okay with
2
you,
weeks
Tom? Mark? Okay, then, in 2 weeks from tonight, we'll have another meeting. We'll have an answer for you, and we will vote on that.
Excellent, thank you very much for your time, thanks to everyone in the audience for their information, their input. It's been a pleasure.
Are there any other questions before I call a close to the meeting?
I'd just like the committee to ponder on one thing. In Ayer at the moment, you could buy a 4-bedroom, 2 garage, 2 or 3 bathroom house, ignoring land and builder's profit, for around 400,000. That means for 54 million, we could build 130 houses like that. I can't quite imagine a school the size of 130 big houses. So why is it going to cost 54 million?
Prevailing wage.
That's one reason.
Just a thought.
Also, I think you're
Also
also
a
allowed
school, not
to
a
just
house.
sold my house for
I
about
think
that.
I
It does
would,
not have any rooms,
I would
so-
pose that question to the school committee, because they're the ones that build the schools.
I'm not an architect or builder, so I can't.
Mass School Building Authority's website has extremely detailed information for what they require for minimum square footage of various spaces, and then of course there's prevailing wage, there's construction materials that are very different in commercial construction from residential. There's lots of reasons, and there's quite a bit of information on MSBA's website that explains their
Houses
process.
are better than 100.
If there are no other comments, I will bring the meeting, I will
I got
entertain a
maybe
motion.
one other thing to bring up, in that I will have to step down from the finance committee after this meeting
Understand.
due to moving across the country, so.
Oh, is that why?
Yeah,
He thinks moving out of town is a good reason.
out of state, out
We
of
did remote.
Well,
Good
Brad,
call in.
northeast. Yeah.
Thank you for your service, you've been
Yes,
a
thank you,
very,
Greg.
you've been an asset. Thank you very much.
Sure.
I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
The meeting is adjourned at
I guess we'll second or vote.
7:54 on the 28th of August, 20.